Welcome to the Unlist. Today, we're going to be reviewing Naughton and Wilson. Yeah, I know, some of you are like, oh, isn't that the brand from that British influencer fragrance guy, Mr. Smelly? Yeah, it is. It's his stuff. So I should probably get it out of the way right now before we get too long into the video that these are not promotional bottles. Dan Naughton did not send these to me. I did not get them from any store that gave them to me for free. So I could say, oh, I got them from this store. So they're not promoted that way. I literally bought them out of pocket. And I got them on a bundle deal. So the thing where you get the 3 bottles for $200. And since I use PayPal, I can do the pay in 4 scheme. So it's like, yeah, $200 is still a lot of money. Even though it is 3 fragrances, it's $200, but I've got $50 coming out of like every 2 weeks. I get hit for $50, so it's not bad. And if I want to pay it all off at one time, I can later on down the road. I don't have to wait the whole period, but it's like layaway. It's like those of you guys remember when you could go into Sears or whatever, or Kmart, and you could take an item and put it on layaway, and then just pay every couple of weeks. You pay a little bit on it. The difference is though that you get to have the product now because it's PayPal, so you're still getting it shipped to you. So you get it shipped to you, and they just take the money out. So it's convenient for a lot of my bigger fragrance purchases in general, not just Naughton and Wilson, but a lot of my bigger purchases in general. When a fragrance costs over $100, $150, $200, and I really want it bad enough, and I can't find a discount anywhere, I can't make it cheaper. That's the price. I got to pay that $200, $300, whatever it is. You know, I stick it on the paying for. That way it's only like 50, 60, 70 bucks, whatever, every couple of weeks. It's just a little less painful for someone like me who doesn't make a ton of money. So, but anyway, I bought them. I bought them out of pocket. So my reviews are going to be my opinion. And another thing is, I don't really know Dan Naughton, Mr. Smelly. I mean, yes, I was on one of his live streams like a long time ago, but you have to understand the context of that. I was not invited to his live stream by him. He was having a live stream with 3 other people, and one of those people backed out last minute, and one of those other people that was still there was a friend of mine. So you guys know JJ Colborn, right? Effluvium. We're friends. We talk. So JJ was like, hey, I know a guy. Let me bring him in real quick. And I guess Dan Naughton said yes, agreed to that. I mean, I'm a literal nobody. So I'm a nobody. But he was willing to let a nobody jump in his live stream. So there I was. Me, little old me, you know, in my pajamas with my messed up hair and, you know, all of my lack of any, you know, in his live stream. And I was there for, I don't know, hour or something. But never spoke to him since. Never been back to any other live streams. Can't talk to him in DMs on Instagram. Have no other direct form of contact. So as far as I know, we're not friends. So do not assume any personal connection or bias on my part towards him as a person. You know, we have our disagreements and we have our agreements in general, like most people, right, have things they agree with and things they don't. But by and large, we're just 2 different ships. He's a very big ship. You know, I'm a little tiny dinghy just kind of out there in the ocean floating. You know, he's the Titanic sailing past. Hope you don't hit an iceberg, bro. Just saying. But he's the Titanic going past. And I'm just a little lifeboat over here doing my thing. So, anyhow, I bought these because being familiar with his channel and being familiar with the kind of fragrances he likes, I know he likes vintage and classic styled men's fragrances, fougères, chypres, citrus woody fragrances, semi-orientals. So the guy is big on gentlemen. He likes Givenchy gentlemen, I should say. He likes Givenchy gentlemen. He likes Guerlain Heritage. He likes Creed Bought Portugal. He likes things of that nature. So he likes those classic, sort of stuffy to some people, but those sort of classic. So, you know. Stuff like that. Stuff like that. Stuff like that. Stuff like that. I think you get the point now. So, because he likes those kind of fragrances, and I like those kind of fragrances, and if you read the descriptions on the different Naughton and Wilson products that he's launched, you can kind of draw a conclusion that I'm probably going to like his fragrances, regardless of whether I agree with his opinion on all matters or whatever. None of that really makes a bit of difference. So I went ahead and I bought them. And so here are my thoughts. Now we can get to the proper review of these fragrances. These Naughton and Wilson fragrances from Dan Naughton, aka Mr. Smelly 77, and Matt Wilson. Now, a little bit of background that I was able to find, because there's not a whole lot of information. Matt Wilson is Scottish. He's an entrepreneur. He's probably the financial backer. I know they did a Kickstarter in the beginning. Before these were launched, there was a Kickstarter to raise money for them. But I think the administrative side of things, you know, the what they call the back end. I think Matt Wilson is the back end of this stuff, and Dan is the creative director, the front end, the face, you know, doing the talking, designing the perfumes, all that stuff. And the perfumer is John Stephen. And I don't know if you know a whole lot about British fragrances, but John Stephen has a lot of credentials in various English brands, going all the way back to the 80s with Je Can Speak. So Je Can Speak number 88, you're familiar with that fragrance. Dark rose, gothic masculine fragrance, people call that. He's done stuff for Je Can Speak. He's done Duke of Pall Mall. He did one of the Duke of Pall Mall fragrances, which is very rare now, discontinued, very rare. But Duke of Pall Mall, Je Can Speak, Cotswold. He did Cotswold fragrances. Another brand that I can't think of off the top of my head. It's an A word, but there's a brand he did where the names have like Mr. This and Mrs. That. Very English kind of deal. And then, of course, the biggest one that most of you are going to know is Bodacia the Victorious. He's done a lot of Bodacia the Victorious. I think he actually may have a ownership stake in that brand. So, I'm not the biggest fan of Bodacia the Victorious, but I won't hold it against him in this case. So he does these fragrances too. It's not a bad deal, you know? If I had to pick between like Jeremy Fragrance and all of his Alberto Moria stuff and Dan Naughton and his John Stevens, I would go John Stevens, or Steven rather. I would go John Steven all day before I went Alberto Morillas, because Alberto Morillas, creatively speaking, has left the building decades ago. I mean, he did some really creative stuff in the 70s and 80s. He did some kind of cool stuff in the 90s, and even in the 2000s, Morillas was doing some cool stuff, but he's just been kind of like phoning it in for at least 20 years now. But he's also old, and he's made all his money, and he's got his own brand too, My Sincere. So he doesn't really need to be creative. He can just milk it and then basically be in like semi-retirement effectively. So So if I had to pick between that guy and John Steven, I'd pick John Steven all day, obviously. So now, the first of these is going to be the original Gravitas Pour Homme. And if you want to see the box, okay, here's the box. I'm not a person who does unboxing videos, okay? I don't do unboxing videos. But there it is. Now, what does it smell like? I made you wait 10 minutes before I even got to the first fragrance because you know I don't give a shit about your time. So, you know I don't care. First thing I got to say is, yeah, okay. John Steven and a guy who loves vintage fragrances. 1 + 1 = 2. A equals A. You should have guessed what this is going to smell like. Classic 70s, 80s style aromatic fougere with semi-oriental elements. So think sandalwood, think amber, think all that nice, heavy, plush sort of things that you would expect from fragrances from that period. So we're talking Pierre Cardin Pour Monsieur from 72. We're talking Etienne Agenais Super Fragrance from 78. We're talking Bois de Portugal from 87, Creed. We're talking Basil Uomo Forte from, I think, 88. Chanel Pour Monsieur Toilette Concentré from 89. Tiffany for Men from 89. New York by Parfums de Nicolai, also 89. Of course, Guerlain Heritage 92. Pacha de Cartier 92. Jazz by Yves Saint Laurent 88. Jazz Prestige 1993. La Ligue Pour Homme 1997. So on and so forth. Like this is the genre. That all of that stuff I just named, all of that is the genre in which this exists. So if you like any of that stuff, any of those fragrances I just named, the Heritage, the Bois de Portugal, the Pacha, the Jazz, the Super Fragrance, you know, Basil Uomo Forte, Chanel Pour Monsieur Concentré, all that stuff, the Pierre Cardin. If any of that is your bag, then you could just stop right now. You could just click this video and just go buy this. And you'll like it. It's just that simple. I don't need to break it down any more detailed for you than that. Those of you who do want a more detailed analysis, well, let's just say that this tries to find like a happy medium between all of those that I just named, all that stuff, the Heritage, the Bois de Portugal. It tries to find a happy medium between those fragrances and a more traditional fougere. This is a more traditional fougere without the sandalwood, without all that, the spices. So think Fougere Royale, think Zino Davidoff, think more modern day fragrances like Beau de Jour. Think that style, that really classic Victorian 19th century where the focus was on the fern accord, the green accord, right? With the dry hay-like tonka and stuff. And some animalic nuances, some very effulgent sort of almost bucolic, farm-like, you know, with like the ambergris notes and the oak moss being dosed very high, so it's very, very mossy, almost has that dank kind of muskiness to it. And that is going to be a point of separation, right? Because Pacha and all those other ones, right, they're not very musky. Heritage, not musky. Bois de Portugal is not really musky. So those older fougères, that Fougère Royale generation, right, and all the ones that try to copy that, basically, you know, even more artisanal niche stuff like Darren Allen's Dorian's Fougère or Film Noir by Clandestine Laboratories, all of those go in that muskier Victorian kind of direction. So this is the happy medium. This is the direct in between of those. And, you know, it almost takes somebody in the fragrance community, whether you're a YouTuber like Dan Naughton or just a collector enthusiast like me, right? It takes somebody with that kind of knowledge and taste in fragrances to even think of combining those. Your usual commercial corporate ghoul type of person, your marketing guru, your mood board person, right? Yeah, let's run the numbers. Let's see what the demographics tell us. They're not going to combine those kind of things together because that's like 100 years apart, right? You're taking 1880 and 1980 and together. Not really going to get that. So if you want to say nerdy, that makes this a bit nerdy, I guess. You know, I suppose it does. It's a very frag nerd kind of fragrance. It's a very, frag heady, frag nerdy kind of fragrance for that reason, because it's combining those elements. And I know Dan Naughton already has a problem with people who review his fragrances that aren't dressed to the nines. He's said multiple times that he doesn't like it when YouTubers show up in t-shirts, or they put on baseball hats, or they wear pajamas or whatever on camera. So here I am doing all of those things. Here I am in my pajamas with messy hair, straight out of the shower, not combed, and I'm reviewing his fragrances. And I'm not wearing a leisure suit. I'm not in business casual. Okay, my hair's not done up. Sorry, not sorry. This is just how I roll. You can Photoshop a Armani suit onto me later on if you really feel the need to do so. But, So my final thoughts on this is it's great. I mean, it really is great. And you don't have to like Dan Naughton or his channel to appreciate this. So I want to say to all of you people out there who are really weird and salty about influencer brands and YouTuber brands, please take that chip off your shoulder. Take that grudge out back and old yeller that shit. Shotgun behind the shed. Whatever you got to do. Bury it. Just don't put it in the pet cemetery, please, or it'll come back and kill you. But just get rid of that. Take that umbrage away, all right? And just give this a shot. And because it says Naughton and Wilson on it, it doesn't say Mr. Smelly on it. You can pretend. You can pretend that this is not an influencer brand. You can pretend. Just in the same way that Eugenizic, his brand, what's it called? Less Abstraits. It doesn't say Eugen, doesn't say you smells good, right, on the bottles. It just says Less Abstraits. You can do the same thing with that. You can pretend that he's not involved. You can just pretend that it's a brand. You bought it at a store. You bought it at Lucky Scent or whatever it is, because you can buy this on Lucky Scent too. You don't have to buy it from them directly. You can pay more money if you want to and buy from Lucky Scent. If it bothers you that much, then that's what you can do. But take the chip off the shoulder and just give it a shot, because it is really, really good. Like I said, a bit on the nerdy side. Like I said, you've got to have that sort of taste for that vintage fragrance style and then combine two different, basically, kind of vintage styles. Now, the next one I got is the Essentia version of this. And the presentation is just about the same. You get the same metal cap, the heavy metal brass. I'm guessing Naughton and Wilson was taking a nod from Roja Dove or Parfums de Marly and putting the big heavy caps on. However, and I'm not a package guy, I don't really care about packaging. However, I gotta deduct a few points because this paper label does feel like it's going to wear off, like it's kind of cheap. And the other one had a nice brass plate on it. I don't really need brass plates on my bottles, but I mean, to go from a brass plate like that to this, I'm just like, come on, man. It's like not even felt. It's like construction paper. It feels like construction paper, and I'm afraid I'm going to rub this. Like if I touch this too many times, I'm going to rub this off. I'm afraid of that. And if you go to the website and you look at the bottles on the website, they show this shiny, like metal graphic with like bigger words written underneath of it, and it looks looks kind of more like this, honestly. I sort of like expected them all to have some kind of plate like that. I mean, it's not a big deal. I turned the sprayer around so it won't spray on the label. It'll spray this way, but still, it's like, I wonder how that's going to look in 5 years because I'm not going to use this up. I don't use up bottles very quickly, so I don't know what this is going to look like in 5 years, or it's going to rub off. I mean, it is what it is. Ultimately, it smells good, so I can forgive a little bit of packaging whoopsie, but I just, like I said, kind of wish that they had at least done like some kind of like plastic over this or something, some kind of like finish to like protect this. This is just completely unprotected. And I know Creed did the felt for a while, but felt is not the same as paper. Felt is fabric. Okay, I feel like the felt's a little more resilient to damage than this, like, Joanne Fabrics, Michael's Crafts, Hobby Lobby level like construction paper. Here we are in grade school taking construction paper and folding it into little hats and airplanes, and now I'm putting it on my perfume bottle. Just feel like we could have done better with that, a little bit better. Now the actual smell is, well, it's kind of like the 90s version of Gravitas, where I said that one is like a 70s 80s hybrid. You get the 70s 80s green, and then the sandalwood profile and the spices, and then you get that Fougere Royale Zeno kind of like muskiness in it. Well, this one is kind of like, let's push that profile into the 90s more. Let's freshen it up. Let's make it smoother. This is a little closer to the Pasha era, the Jazz Prestige era, the Lalique Pour Homme era. This is closer to that era. So do not call this a fresh fougere. This is not a fresh fougere. This is still very much an aromatic fougere. This is still very much a, it still has semi-oriental qualities. Not to the same level as the original Gravitas does, of course, but the key difference with this is you get less of the big spices and more herbs. You get Artemisia in this, a little bit chewier, right? A little bit sharper. The coriander and cardamom in here, you get that in place of nutmeg and other heavy stuff. This has vanilla, a little more vanilla in the base. So you get the mint up top and the vanilla in the base and the herbs in the heart. And it also dials back a bit of the roundness. The Gravitas is very round, and the roundness comes from the mandarin orange. It's a sweeter kind of citrus. This is more like bergamot citrus, so it's not as sweet. But the vanilla puts a different sweetness, so you're getting rid of the rounded sweetness from the mandarin orange, and you're replacing it with a bit more of a smooth sweetness that's not as round, because it's got the herbs and the dustier elements of the heart switching it up. So it's a bit of a transformer presto changeo, where at the very heart of it, it's still that ambergris and that oak moss and the lavender geranium and that plush kind of, again, sort of old money smelling, formal smelling kind of fougere. But we're bringing in some of the 90s with the mint, with the vanilla, with the herbs, making it a bit more lively, a little bit less musky too. The ambergris here is not punching as hard as it does in the other one. And I'm not saying it's real ambergris. I don't know. If Dan Naughton wants to chime in and say, yeah, this has got real ambergris in it, then okay. So when I say ambergris, I'm saying ambergris with air quotes like this, ambergris. So if it might be real, it might not be real. Frankly, I don't care. I have smelled plenty of synthetic ambergris, different types out there, and they're fine. They smell good. They smell sufficiently musky to me. So now, is it redundant to own Gravitas Essentia if you have Gravitas? Maybe a little bit. I don't want to say it's completely redundant, but maybe a little bit. You have to really love Gravitas. If you really love Gravitas, the Essentia is a good alternative for when it's a little warmer outside. You know, that's really what it boils down to. A little warmer, little sunnier. You got a little bit fresher, lighter version of basically the same fragrance. So it's a true flanker. It's not just a flanker where it's a whole different fragrance, right? A whole different fragrance in the same bottle with the same name. It is literally a alternate take to the original. So, you know, Gravitas Essentia is to Gravitas what something like the old Antaeus Sport would be to Antaeus, or what Koros Eau de Sport or Koros Freischär, whatever, would be to Koros, where it's the same fragrance but a little bit modified. That's kind of what you got there. So they form like a team, I suppose. And now, last but not least, the Chypre Fullmanari. You know, so I've got the Gravitos and the Gravitos Scent Trail, and now this is the Chypre Fullmanari, right? So we get the Chypre Fullmanari. This one does a black matte cap. It's still metal, but it's like, looks almost like they're trying to go for a wrought iron. It's a powder coating. It's not actually iron. It's like a powder coating paint to make it look matte, but it has like a wrought iron fence kind of feel to it with that particular. Still the paper though. Still the Joanne fabrics, you know, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, craft store, grade school, kindergarten, playing with paste, right? Eating paste, licking paste off a paddle. It's still got that kind of thing on the front. Again, I mean, it is what it is. The fragrance is really good, so I can look past the label there. I'm going to pick on it and make fun of it, but I can look ultimately I can look past it. Now this is for you lovers of things like Devon and Azure, and to a lesser extent Dunhill Blend 30, to a lesser extent something like just sort of not really polo, not really, but there's a particular style that this sits in, and it's another late 70s, early 80s style. There are a lot of Chypres that came out at that time. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, the original Basil Uomo from 87, Crizia Uomo from like 84, One Man Show, Jacques Bogart One Man Show from 1980, Devon by Aramis Estee Lauder is another one. The Dunhill Blend 30 could also slide in there. So it's this sort of late 70s through to like mid 80s genre of Chypre where a lot of castoreum was used. So it's got your green galbanum elements and your pine elements, and it's got labdanum in here and oak moss, and a lot of your typical Chypre notes, bergamot up top, a little bit of jasmine in the heart, not a ton of jasmine, but a little bit of jasmine in the heart. But if you're a fan of stuff like that, like I said, Devon, One Man Show, Crizia Uomo, Basil Uomo, if you like that kind of vibe, this basically runs in that same ballpark. Now, there are some more recent fragrances that kind of vibe like this too. Again, calling out Eugen, but Descendres, that fragrance is similar to this. Descendres is much greener though, much sharper, much greener. This is muskier. This is more the castoreum. This is more the animalic side. And also, Clandestine Laboratories has a fragrance called Vert, V-E-R-T. So if you're a fan of Vert by Clandestine Laboratories, you like Vert, you'd probably like Chypre Fullmanari as well. It's very similar. Chypre Fullmanari is kind of more like that toe the line between the Vert and something like the Devon, so it feels a little more like a period designer fragrance. Like it's got more of the Devon vibe, but it's also built in a little more of like a artisanal indie kind of way. So it's like a more artisanal indie sort of Devon, right? Devon by way of Darren Allen, or by way of Clandestine or Rogue, you know, like Manny Cross made a version of Devon, it'd be like this. So it's kind of the vibe, but it's different though. It's not redundant, you know. It's its own thing. When I compare to other fragrances, it's just for point of reference. It's not a clone, it's not a copy. Okay. If you put this next to Devon side by side, they would be different. They'd be very different from each other. So take it more as a, if you like, you would also like. That's how I'm saying this. If you like Devon, you would also like this. That's how I'm putting it. They're not the same. And that's it, guys. Naughton and Wilson. As of this video, I haven't smelled Arezzo or Bon Viveur, but with as much as I like those, I would definitely consider buying those other two that I'm missing. Now, I'm pretty sure Dan Naughton is not going to watch all 32 minutes of my video, or even probably the first 5 minutes, so he's not really going to know what I think about his stuff. He's not going to sit and watch all this. But if he's at the end, if he did somehow prove me wrong, and he's watched all this, and he's gotten to this part where I say he's not going to watch it, then I guess shame on me for not having faith in you, but I highly doubt he's going to watch all this. I know George Zaharoff watched my video on his stuff all the way through. So kudos to that man. Sat through my opinion all the way through. But I don't think Dan is going to watch all 32 minutes of this video. But if he does, I just want to say you made some good stuff. Whether people like your content or not, whether people approve of your opinion or not, or like your jokes or whatever you do, you have some pretty good taste in fragrances, and you did pretty good, and I'm happy to have them in my collection. And coming from someone like me, who's always busting everyone's balls when it comes to influencers and stuff, to have me say that is a revelation, because I don't normally say stuff like that. So here I am saying that you've done good. Little old nobody me says that you've done good, and I'm happy to have bought these. So that's it. Naughton and Wilson in a nutshell. Hope you enjoyed it. Catch you next time.